the culture shock that I remember the most was just feeling so much shame because when I met the people and started hanging out with them and going to their homes and building my team that was going to be doing this work, I just fell in love with the people and the culture. And I felt so just bad for believing those lies that I heard from the news or from people that didn't know any better, and having all this fear and anxiety built up. And then I get there and I'm like, oh my gosh, these people are nothing like what I had thought.
Welcome to The Follow-Up from Premier Speakers Bureau, featuring in-depth conversations with the world's most in-demand keynote speakers.
Hi, I'm Brian Lord, president here at Premier Speakers Bureau, and we're excited to have on with us today Doc Hendley. Doc is the founder and president of Wine to Water, a nonprofit organization that serves in communities to provide clean water for people in need around the world. In 2003, Doc dreamed up the concept of Wine to Water while bartending and playing music in nightclubs around Raleigh, North Carolina. Then, not too long after, 5 or 6 years later, Doc was selected as one of the top 10 CNN heroes in 2009. Now, Wine to Water has grown from one man's mission to a global movement of clean water, having reached more than 1 million people in 45 countries. And Doc, as he likes to say, is proof that anyone, even a tattooed keg-tapper, can cure what ails the world. So, Doc, thank you so much for coming on and joining us.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, where did the original idea come for Wine to Water? It's almost 20 years now. It's hard to believe, because I remember when it got, not long after it got started, we heard about you the first time. Where did that idea get started?
It's a great question. And, a lot of people talk about like, I'm the founder, I had this idea. And I actually kind of view it a little strangely, like kind of the opposite. I feel like Wine to Water found me more than me, like founding it. It started in a crazy middle of the night experience in December of 2003. I was bartending in an old Irish pub in Raleigh. Loved my job. Honestly, I was like, you know what? I love being a bartender. I think I could do this for the rest of my life. Like I loved it that much. I'm like, this is where I belong. And so I got to a point where I wanted a break from the bars. Christmas 2003, December 2003. I needed a break from the pub. I wanted to visit family and kind of just get away for a week or two. My boss was really generous. He's like, take as much time as you need. And so I came, my parents had just retired to a little small mountain community in North Carolina named Boone. And I went up there just to have some time for myself. And in the middle of the night, I had this phrase in my head, Wine to Water, over and over. And I was kind of half asleep, half awake, and it was kind of freaking me out because those things don't really happen to me. And then now I'm kind of awake. I'm like, why is it in my head? Why is it backwards? My daddy was a preacher man growing up. So I heard all about like water to wine, but like, why is it in my head? Why is it backwards? What's going on? So now I can't sleep. So, as you said in the intro, like I also played a little music. So I thought, maybe this is inspiration for like a song that I'm going to write. And I'm going to be this Nashville like songwriter. This is really, all right, cool. I'm getting excited. So I write Wine to Water on the page, right? Just to start writing a song. And the second I could see the words written on the page, my insides just kind of got all like knotted up. And I just got this nervous feeling. And I'm like, it's not supposed to be a song. I don't know what it is, but it's supposed to be something different. And so I stayed up the rest of the night, hopped on the computer, started researching. I've dealt with wine every day at my job, so I didn't look up anything about that. It's about water. And I found out something I had no idea about before that night. My 23, 24 years of life or whatever I was at that time, I had no idea there were young kids, there was families walking hours every single morning to get something that I have coming out of my tap and I've never thought twice about. Like I had no idea that once they walk hours and bring their water back, it looks closer to what I have in my coffee cup right here than what we have in a nice bottle. And they drink that. And unfortunately, the number one reason why mama is going to have to bury her child before they reach the age of 5, then and now, unfortunately still is because of diarrheal disease due to dirty water and water-related issues. And I was just captivated, honestly, that night. And I'm like, this is it. This is what I'm supposed to be doing in my life. So I'd get other bars in town to like donate space or food, or like the local breweries would donate beer or wine from wineries. And I get people to donate things, host an event, raise money. And my thought was just to give all the money away, let somebody else do all this water work, and I'll keep being a bartender. And that really led to my first job offer. When I went to the first organization, like, hey, I've raised this money. I just want it to go to water. How does this work? I don't know how charities work. Instead of just walking away as a donor, they ended up hiring me. And so 6 months after my very first Wine to Water event in August of 2004, I'm on a plane flying to Sudan and just utilizing the money that we had raised and starting to dig wells for people in the middle of the genocide there in Darfur. And I guess never looked back after that. So
Yeah, that's not where, I mean, that's not where you would think to start. Like there are a lot of places that need water, and going to one of the most dangerous places on earth at that time is not what made you start there. Is it just they're like, hey, this kid's young, doesn't know any better?
well, no. So the guy I went to meet ended up being a mentor of mine. He was a well driller before he got involved with this other charity. And so I went to go give the money, and I'm like, how does it work? How do I know it's going to go to water? So he started asking me all these questions, and I was asking him questions. And so he answered all mine. I'm like, great, I trust you guys. I'm going to give you your money. And at the very end, he's like, why are you doing this? Are you looking for a job? I'm like, no, I got a great job. I'm just looking for someone to take this money that I can trust. And he's like, I told him about Wine to Water and the weird thing that happened that night, and the people at the bars that are getting really excited and getting behind this. And he's like, I think there's a lot of people that need something like this in their lives that our organization probably doesn't reach to folks in the pubs and the bars. And it's because most people know it's not just the beneficiaries to get the water that are blessed from things like this. It's also the people that get to give, both people's lives are changed. And so he's like, I think there's a lot to be said for, the people you're reaching here. But he's like, you can't keep raising this money and being the face of this Wine to Water thing if you've never been there or actually seen this work. You need to see it more than just a screen on a computer. So why don't you let me send you somewhere? And he showed me on the map all the different projects. Here's where you can go. And I'm like, well, look, I don't have an engineering degree. I've never really viewed myself as like the smartest guy in the whole world. So just send me to the worst place on that map, because if it's really bad, I can't really mess it up any more than it's already messed up. And so he's like, well, that's going to be Afghanistan or this place called Darfur in Sudan. But in Afghanistan, we've got a team. They can pick you up at the airport. They can show you what to do. Darfur's brand new. Like, it's this new genocide happening. We're going to have somebody there maybe a week or two before you, but you're all just going to be figuring it out on your own. And I'm like, all right, so let's do Sudan. I'll go there. So that's how that off.
Do you remember stepping off the plane? What did that feel like? Because I know I've done some trips to places that are a little bit different. What was that experience walking off the plane or going through that different kind of airport the first time?
Well, for me, my worldview again was quite small. You can tell by the way I talk. I'm from the Carolinas. I hadn't really traveled all that much, and my world was up a few bars in the South, and so I get there, and first of all, just the difference. I mean, I land in Khartoum, which is the capital of Sudan, and it's like literally, 110 plus, like getting off in this desert, Sahara desert. So it's just like physically strikingly different than the temperate climate from North Carolina that I'm used to. And then to go even hotter desert in Darfur. And so, there's the middle of a genocide that was shocking. But for me, I tell folks that the thing that was culture shock the most, and in the best way possible, was this whole, I had a lot of fear going into Darfur, the demographic even of the population, 95% tribal, Black, African, Islamic. And here I'm a Southern white guy from a Christian home in the South. And so I'm scared, to go there. I got family members, aunts, uncles, like, why are you going to help these people? They probably just want to, hurt you or whatever. Or why would you do this? And I didn't really have an answer. Now I'm terrified. I'm like listening to all these outside voices, watching the news about all that was happening post 9/11 from Islamic countries. So how this fear, and I get there, and the first 2 weeks, the culture shock that I remember the most was just feeling so much shame, because when I met the people and started hanging out with them and going to their homes and building my team that was going to be doing this work, I just fell in love with the people and the culture. And I felt so just bad for believing those lies that I heard from the news or from people that didn't know any better, and having all this fear and anxiety built up. And then I get there and I'm like, oh my gosh, these people are nothing like what I had thought. They're so amazing and beautiful in the culture and like everything. Like, why would anyone be afraid of? So anyway, there was a lot of culture shock, both from the physical landscape to a whole lot of other areas that I needed more than anything in my life at that time. From
the standpoint of water, what does water do? Like, what difference does it make for those who don't know?
I mean, as you know, when NASA goes to look at other planets, the first thing they look for signs of life is there signs of water? If there's no signs of water, there's no chance for life. It's just impossible. So without water, there is no life. It's the same with us. And I always think of like water as like I think it's the most powerful thing on the planet. Like we have maybe we're getting ready to come up on hurricane season, right? There's one probably come up the coast, I think like literally in the next couple of days. And that water, it literally it's so powerful. It can save lives. It can bring people together, but it also is so powerful. It can cause destruction and chaos. And there's wars that are fought over water. The next greatest world wars probably aren't going to be fought over oil like they used to be historically, or property or other things. They'll be probably in the future fought over water. But I think if water is treated correctly, like if we do it right, water has the ability and the power to unite people and unite cultures of multiple different backgrounds and belief systems and faiths or no faiths at all or whatever. Water has the ability to bring people together and heal people. If you do water work correctly, I believe it has the ability to heal a lot of brokenness in our world. And that's why I love Wine to Water so much. Like, not just about pop a well on the ground or build a filter. We look holistically at everything. Like, what can we do to bring so many different people groups and cultures together and have water physically, literally heal them, but also heal them maybe culturally and in the community, and help people to see the value in each other and not just, oh, they're from another tribe or another community or another background. So we do really believe water is a tool that allows a lot of healing to happen. So
yeah, and I love it too. I mean, like I've seen you talk about before, like it helps women be able to have jobs, that those hours a day spent walking, you can raise your kids, you can raise crops, you can own a business and run a store. I mean, it's just amazing things that the wells you and others have helped build have been able to do in those communities.
100%. I had somebody ask me today, like, if one person that sticks out of all the, now we're, like you said, over 1 million, and we're actually over 50 countries now. So millions of people, what's one that sticks out? And when they asked it, the one that jumped off in my head was the lady that I met in Cambodia. We visited her home after we put a well in for her family in her little community. And it had been there for about 5 years. And when we visited, and she told me her story. She said, before I got this well, I used to have to go to the different community leaders in town and beg for rice, for food for my children, my family. My husband died and I'm left to take care of him. Then Wine to Water came and put a well in for us. And from then on, I wasn't spending any more money or having to try to beg for money or anything to get medicine, because my children just stopped being sick now. And then after that, I started taking the excess water that I didn't need for drinking. And she created a little small farm garden and growing her own crops. And to your point right there, like by 5 years later, she now had put people from the surrounding community coming to her because she had an abundance. So she had more than what she needed for her family. And she was able to give and provide for her community from the little small farm that she had planted from the well that we put in for her. So it just leads to so much. Like, that's why I literally have to pinch myself every day. Like, I get to do this? Like, really? It's pretty cool.
That's great. So how has the past 2 years, like the pandemic response to that, how has that affected what you do?
I mean, holy moly, I was terrified the first few months of the pandemic, not just because of the unknown of the pandemic, but I mean, a third of all nonprofits shut their doors during the pandemic. Like, it was devastating. And we didn't know if we were going to be able to stay open. Obviously, we couldn't fly and support our teams globally. And so it was so cool to watch our community. So there's about 60 of us around the world. We have an office in Nepal that covers Southeast Asia, office in Tanzania that covers East Africa, office in Dominican, which is kind of Central America and Caribbean, office in Bogota, which covers Colombia and the Amazon jungle. And these teams that this is our whole goal, is to empower and build up our local communities and teams on the ground. And they just pivoted. Like, we didn't know how much money we were going to be able to send to dig new wells and build new filters. So we have factories and things like that, and they weren't able to start to keep making water filtration systems like in the early days there. So they used resources they had, and they started building hand washing stations, because a big thing in the communities at the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of healthcare facilities not only didn't have masks and PPE equipment especially when that first strain was coming through and it was like really bad. They had nothing to even wash their hands with, So our teams pivoted and started creating these hand washing stations in Nepal, Tanzania, and in Latin America. And we put thousands of hand washing stations all throughout healthcare facilities, schools, police stations, people that couldn't just take the day off and stay at home and work remote. So we started putting all these. So a water organization, hygiene and sanitation are under the umbrella of what we do. So we started focusing very heavy on hygiene and sanitation in the early days of the pandemic. And local governments, like the Nepali government, were like, can y'all help us? And so that literally our teams in the field like really kept our organization not just afloat like to where we continue operating, but actually we grew. We were able to help more people during the pandemic than we ever had. And so again, it's kind of that thing, like in the beginning, there was a lot of fear of what do we do, but our teams our culture is so good at being like entrepreneurial and shifting and not being afraid and just standing still and waiting for whatever to happen. Like we move, whether it's right or wrong, we move one way or the other and we figure it out. And our teams here in the US, we were born in the restaurants, and in North Carolina, millions of restaurant employees lost their jobs in a day. And below the Wine to Water offices, there's a whole a restaurant and pub downstairs, and we have some mutual ownership of, like, friends and family that have ownership of it. So they shut down. So we cleared out all the tables, and Wine to Water started providing meals and food to the restaurant workers that lost their jobs. We started getting sponsorships of that, and we fed over 250,000 meals in those early days when restaurant workers. And so again, we're not a food organization, but the people that made our organization who we are all of a sudden can't put dinner on the table. And so again, by the time we come out of the pandemic 2 years later, we've got a team of people that believed in us before, that we were able to physically feed and put food on their table during that time here in North Carolina. And we got teams now around the world working with hospitals, police stations. And so our organization now has been growing quite a bit from the middle and then on even after the pandemic. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, as you're doing these things, kind of one of the things I know you talk about as well is that, you were somebody that had a lot of flaws, and maybe still all of us do. What made you be able to look past those flaws and focus on your strengths?
I don't know if I ever really do a great job of looking past them, because I'm a kind of person, sometimes I get stuck on my flaws still, because I'm very aware of my mistakes and my failures and things I should do better. But I think because it's been who I am since I was little. Like I don't know why it is, but like I have, like, even after my time in Darfur, I look back at that year, and even though we helped thousands of people, like I look at the things I should have done different, I should have done better, and it hung over my head. And I almost quit and went back to being a bartender, and would have given up and not done Wine to Water had it not been for my wife. I met my wife like 3 days after coming home, and she gave me the strength to not just see. It's kind of like when I first went into Sudan, I believed this lie about the people that I was going to see. Well, I have this voice in my head that lies to me a lot of times, but sometimes I believe it. And I don't have the strength in and of myself to see the truth. So there's so much I rely on the people that I love and respect around me to help me see those things. And so really that's what's happened throughout Wine to Water's history, whether it's from the very first person that helped me stay on track, which is my wife, or whether it's you just saw earlier before we hopped on this call, Carrie, who works closely with me here at Wine to Water, whether it's through Parmod, our COO from India, who lived half his life in Botswana, and the team around me, like they helped me on those times that I sometimes can only see the things that I should have done different or better. And so I don't know if I've ever quite figured that out, but what I figured out is surround myself with people that we all encourage each other and build each other up. And so, yeah, I don't know if that's a great way to answer the questions. I don't know if I do the greatest job of that yet or not.
No, that's great. That's great. Well, one thing, I guess, following up on that, like, how do you choose people? So whether it was when you first landed in Darfur and you took those 2 or 3 weeks to put together a team, or whether you're putting together this international organization that's helping 1 million people in 45 countries, how do you find people to help offset your weaknesses and sort of build on those strengths?
That's a great question. I think 2 things happen. There's sometimes I'm looking and I'll find somebody, like I need somebody with a specific strength that I know that I need, that I don't have, or the area that I'm weak. And so I'll look, and then, it's crazy how, whether it's from that, and I'm like, we had a interim CEO for a while that I didn't want to go back and have to get a business degree, because I never really learned how to do business and hire and fire and be a boss and all that. So I hired for 5 years as a CEO to come on and lead the organization, and then let me learn from him. That, back in 2013 or 14 until like just before the pandemic, like 18 or 19. And it was crazy. We had this stack of people wanting the position from LinkedIn and all the other sites out there. And the one that I saw the most, they just jumped off the page. I kept them on the top of the stack, but I called everybody else because I was afraid that this person would be like, there's no way that we can't afford him. We can't, and all the others, the doors just shut. And this is the last one we waited, and it ended up being perfect. And he's on the board still to this day. He's a dear friend of mine. So even when we're looking, it's always something that's just almost miraculous that happens for this is it, this is the person. But then there's a lot of times where there's times where we're not even looking, but it's just just out of nowhere, like my wife or people that come on, just at the perfect time of, okay, here's a problem, and how do we have a solution to this problem? And then right at that time, there'll be somebody that's like, all right, I need you. I can't figure this out on my own. And really, that's kind of how our team has been built organically. And we've, like other organizations, we've had a lot of turnover. There's times that there's life cycles of entities and organizations, and there's people that are made for the early years of 4 or 5 people, all wearing different hats. And then as an organization grows and you need to wear the same hat and get zeroed in or anything, those people naturally move on to another environment that's similar. And we're just like anybody else. We still have those same type of, issues just the way any other entity does. So, yeah.
So one last question here, maybe the most important one. Which is cooler, martial arts or clogging?
Oh, that's a great question. If you ask my wife, who's national champion clogger, actually, I'll tell you, it's cooler to watch clogging. I'm just going to tell you, it's not cheesy like that one insurance commercial, where they're clogging upstairs in the roof and people oh, the clogging, like literally my wife's feet move so fast. I can't, it's like a superhuman strength. So to watch it's way cooler to watch clogging, but for me to do it, because my feet don't move that fast. We have a little MMA gym here in town. My kids wrestle and do MMA a bit. And so, I'm a big MMA fan, but I'd have to say, I think probably clogging is a decent amount cooler to watch. So
cool. Well, thanks. I want to make sure I ask at least one question you never gotten before, and I don't know.
That was definitely that was a curveball, and I loved it. That was awesome.
All right, awesome. Well, cool. Well, Doc, thank you so much for being on this podcast, but just making a difference in so many people's lives and giving not just the people there in the different countries where you go, but also here in the U.S., donors around the world. Thanks for giving them a chance to serve too. So we really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for joining us for the follow-up. To learn more about today's guest, go to premierspeakers.com. Make sure to subscribe and leave a review wherever you listen.